Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. You might have noticed that we've moved in the last few weeks. It's also been a while since I've done one of these sort of more formal style videos. I've been doing a lot of vlogs lately, and those are kind of fun and they don't take a lot of time, so that's kind of why I've been doing them. But I wanted to make a video today to talk about the birds that we've been seeing around our new house. So our house is situated pretty close to a major river, and there's a lot of wooded area behind us in our backyard, and so I think for that reason we've been seeing a lot of a variety of birds, and I want to talk about them today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by just showing some pictures of the birds that we've been seeing around where we live, and I won't talk about camera stuff. I'll save that for the end of the video for those who are interested. So first off, I'm going to talk about some of the more uncommon birds that we've seen, and I'm going to talk about the birds that I have pictures and videos of. The first bird that I want to share with you guys is the Cedar Waxwing. So I've never seen these birds before, and it just so happened that I was sitting in this chair at this desk looking out this window, and we were visited by a large flock of Cedar Waxwings. My suspicion is that these birds don't typically live around here, and we were just migrating through, and we just so happened to have a large flock of maybe 30-40 individuals, and they all visited this tree right here, this one right outside this window, and that was wonderful to see. As you can see, they have sort of like a creamy pinkish color to them, but with these distinct red tips on their wings and yellow tips on their tails. I have not seen them here since, so it was just a one-day thing. The next bird that I want to show you is the rose-breasted grosbeak. This is a bird that I have also not seen around here before, and in fact I didn't see it. Charlotte took these pictures, so she happened to see them. And again, I think these birds don't typically live around here, but we're just migrating through, and Charlotte was lucky enough to see this individual and snap a couple of pics. The next uncommon bird that we saw was the hairy woodpecker. I believe this is a female individual, because normally you would see a bit of red on the top of their heads. This one did not. Again, I did not spot this particular bird. Charlotte did, and so she snapped a picture of this individual, which is awesome, because we've been seeing woodpeckers around here. We can certainly hear them pecking at the trees, but we've never had one visit the feeder until that one day, so that was great. This next bird is the white-breasted nuthatch, and it's not a bird that I've seen very often, and I don't think I've seen it since either, so it was neat to see it visit our feeder. The next bird is the turkey, which is not an uncommon bird, but it's not a bird that I've seen around here at all. And so that was cool. So this footage was shot by Charlotte. I did not see this particular individual, but I did see a male running through our backyard, but it was so fast that I did not get a chance to grab my camera to shoot some pics. So unfortunately, this is the only pic and video that we have of the turkey. And finally, the next, I'm going to call uncommon bird, is the northern mockingbird. I don't think it's that uncommon, to be honest, but it's not a bird that I've seen around very often. We've been seeing quite a few number of these guys visit our feeders over the last few days. As for other sort of uncommon birds that we don't have pictures of, we have seen some blue jays. They're not uncommon, but again, they're not birds that frequent our house. But I've seen them a number of times in our backyard, and interestingly enough, there's always this one blue jay that visits our neighbor's front yard across the street, but I've never seen them come and visit our feeder. So hopefully one of these days they'll come by and I'll get a good picture of that blue jay. But no pictures yet. And finally, we have seen the pileated woodpecker, which is a fairly large bird. I've seen it fly through our backyard a couple of times. Sorry, we have a little tree stump outside, and I saw it fly over and perch there. But again, it didn't stick around long enough for me to grab my camera and take some pictures. But yes, we have seen some large pileated woodpeckers around here as well. So moving on, I want to talk about some of the more common birds that we've seen that we have pictures of. The first one is the tufted titmouse. This is a very cute and very small bird that we didn't see that much of back at our old place, but now that we're here, we see them quite frequently. Basically every day, they're a frequent visitor to our feeder, and they have a very cute little beady black eyes with a tall gray mohawk. They're quite a joy to have around. Another common bird that we've been seeing is the black-capped chickadee. Now we've seen these birds back at our old place as well, but with our feeder being so close to the window here, we've been getting some great pictures of them, so I wanted to share that with you. We've also seen the house finch. These guys are a little bit less common around here in our new house, whereas I did see them somewhat frequently back at our old place. And of course, we have a lot of European starlings visit our feeder. These are the equivalent of pigeons here. We've also seen, less commonly, the cardinal. It is a fairly common bird around this area. We see it all the time, but they don't visit our feeder quite as frequently. So as for other common birds that we've been seeing around here but don't have pictures of, we have the house sparrow. They're all over the place, so I didn't really think to take pictures of them. We have mourning doves. They don't visit our feeder ever. They're quite large, but we hear them all the time. We do see them all the time. They're the birds that make that kind of noise. Ooh, 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 ooh. Those are mourning doves. We see lots of American robins around here. They do not come to the feeder for some reason either, but they're all over the place. And turkey vultures, we see them circling the skies about our house very frequently, and sometimes they come very close. I'm talking like maybe within 30 feet of our roof. It's they can get pretty close. So anyway, that's it. Those are the pictures of the birds that I wanted to share with you today. For those who are interested, I am going to go on and talk about how I got these pictures. So I'm going to start off by talking about the gear that I used. I used mostly my Sony A6400, and I used my 18 to 135 millimeter kit lens. It's a f3.5 to 5.6 lens. Is not particularly fast or anything like that, but that's the longest zoom that I have. I've also used my 85mm f1.4 prime portrait lens. Some of the pictures were shot using Charlotte's Fuji X-T200, also with the 15 to 45mm kit lens. That's all we have for it right now. And obviously some of the shots were shot on Charlotte's iPhone XR. So you'll notice I don't have any specific birding lenses. 135mm, even on an APS-C camera, is not very long. It's more of a portrait lens, portrait focal length, but because of the setup that I have, I managed to make it work with these relatively short lenses. So let's talk about the setup that I have. So for the pictures and the footage of the Cedar Waxwings, I shot that outside of our second-story bedroom window. And this one is mostly just by luck because we have a tree that is probably about 20 feet from where I'm sitting right now to that tree, and that flock of waxwings just happened to visit that one tree, and so that's how I got those pictures and that video. And the footage and the video of the waxwings were a little bit hazy because most of the windows in this house have screens on them, and so this window right here that I'm looking at right now, where the waxwings were sitting, there's a screen on it. So unfortunately I had to shoot through the screen, and so it's not the greatest image quality. As for most of the other pictures, they were shot using a feeder that was sitting about 10 feet from the desk and the chair. So we had our desk and chairs set up really close to that window, and the feeder was like literally just outside the window. Like I said, everything was within about 10 feet, and that was why I could shoot those pictures using just an 85mm prime lens, and even the Fuji X-T200 with the 45mm kit lens. And so I think that's a very important thing to keep in mind, is that most of us don't have giant birding lenses that Mark Smith might have or Stefan Iernero might have, but you can kind of set things up for success, especially if you're just photographing backyard birds. Just make sure that you have a chair and table set up close, right up against the window, okay, and have the feeder just outside the window, and have your camera ready at all times. So back at our old place, we had a feeder, but it was sitting on a balcony, and we didn't have a chair set up right next to the window. We just sat on our couch. And so if a bird did visit our feeder, I would be sitting on a couch shooting at it with the 135mm lens, which wasn't very long for that kind of distance. You really have to be like right up close, and I'm talking about within 10 to 20 feet if you want to get some good pictures. The other problem with our old place was that our balcony was covered, and so when the bird visited the feeder, it would be within the shade in the balcony, but of course the background was bright blue sky, and so it tended to make the birds dark relative to the background, which did not make for great pictures. So whereas right now with our feeder, it's just right out there in the sun. There's nothing, there's no covering over that feeder. So as for how to shoot these pictures of the birds, I did have to alter my style a little bit. So first of all, for both the A6400 and the XT200, I used shutter priority, and the reason for that is I needed the shutter speed to be at least 200 to 250ths of a second, because birds are fast, and so you want the shutter speed to be fast enough that you don't get a lot of subject motion blur, right? At that speed, you're not going to worry about camera shake blur, but subject motion blur you want to minimize by having a faster shutter speed. And so I use 200 to 250ths of a second, which is okay for birds that are perched on a feeder. But as soon as they moved, even that was too slow. So if you have the sun, if you have enough light, I would go even faster if you could. I have a picture of a chickadee flying in and landing at the feeder, and you cannot see its wings at 1/200th of a second. So if you want to be able to freeze a picture with the wings, you're going to have to go much faster. I'm guessing at least 500ths of a second. As for aperture, I usually just use the widest aperture that was available to me on the kit lenses. Obviously, those are not particularly bright lenses. But for the 85mm prime, even though that's a f1.4 lens, I chose not to shoot at f1.4 for a couple of reasons. Number one, these lenses are never the sharpest at 1.4, and so stopping down will give you a little bit of additional sharpness and oftentimes a little bit of extra contrast. And number two, when you're trying to focus on a bird, they're pretty small. Having a razor thin depth of field will make it just that much harder to nail your focus. So that's why I wanted to stop down a little bit to make it a little bit easier. And number three, nobody wants to see a bird that is only in focus at the eye, and then everything else be kind of blurred out of focus, right? So you still want enough of a depth of field that most of the bird is in reasonable focus. And so don't be afraid to stop down a little bit to be able to achieve that. So for the 85mm prime, I don't know, I mentioned this, I used the f2. Now as for focusing, you would think that with the A6400 and the X-T200's autofocus performance that I could just rely on the autofocus. I quickly found that to not be the case. While the A6400 is very good at nailing focus, having it nail focus on the right part of the bird is not always easy. You know, like you would tap on the bird's head, and sometimes it'll focus a little bit on the beak or on the shoulder, or if the bird is close enough to the feeder, it'll just focus on the feeder. It was kind of hit and miss, and so I primarily use manual focus. Unfortunately, animal eye detect for the A6400 does not work for birds, and you know, it's overall very good, and it certainly is good for larger subjects like humans. But for birds, I just did not find that to be accurate enough. So I mostly used manual focus. Same for the X-T200, used manual focus. Both the kit lenses use electronically coupled focus rings, which made manual focus a little bit tougher. But if you have enough practice, you practice enough, I think you can do it. As for the 85mm prime, that was an alpha lens, A-mount lens, and so that has a mechanically coupled focus ring. So that was a bit of a nicer manual focusing experience. So I should mention at this point that with the 85mm f1.4 prime, with it being an alpha mount or A-mount lens, I used the LAEA3 adapter to adapt it to my A6400, and it works great. That adapter, the LAEA3 adapter, works phenomenally, and really breathed life into my alpha lenses. I wanted to make a video about how awesome the LAEA3 adapter is. It's got its quirks. It's not perfect, but it exceeded my expectations for an adapter. And like I said, I wanted to make a video, but I never got around to it. Let me know if you really want to see a video about that adapter. So the final little bit of advice for shooting pictures of birds is to get into the habit of firing off a lot of shots. So I think most of us are used to taking pictures by waiting for the right moment and then clicking the shutter button. I don't think that works very well for birds because they are too quick, you know. What happens is the bird is going to duck down and peck at the feeder, right? And so you're not going to shoot a picture like that. You're going to wait until it lifts its head. But by the time it lifts its head and you recognize that, and then you press the shutter button and then the shutter to actually go off, in that very, very short amount of time, that split second, the bird's head probably has already ducked back down. And so if you try to shoot pictures like that, you'll find that you're going to have a lot of misses. The bird is going to be en route back down to the feeder, and you're going to get a lot of motion blur or partially obscured heads. And so what I found worked better was to get a sense of the rhythm at which the bird is feeding, because normally they'll peck at it, lift its head up, look around, go back down, peck at the feeder again, lift its head, look around, and back down, up, down, up, down. There's a certain rhythm to it, okay? And so you have to pay attention to that. And so when it ducks its head down, you can predict to some degree when it's going to lift its head back up. And then so you start firing even before the bird lifts its head. And you fire off a ton of shots, okay? You just fire 5, 6, 7 shots in every burst, okay? And you'll end up with a lot of pictures. Probably for this video, I shot, I want to say maybe on the order of like 50 pictures, if not more, across the two cameras. All right, and you're going to find that most of them are not keepers. You're probably looking at only 10 usable pictures out of all of that, right? But if you want to maximize your chance of hitting that perfect shot, you got to get in that habit of just firing boop, 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 like that. Anyway, and that's it, and I will see you in the next one.